Okay, here we go. Hang on, we're going to talk about the endocrine system. I have reduced this lecture pretty dramatically. I'm just going to cover some very basic stuff that maybe isn't quite as difficult to understand, because I was worried about trying to communicate this effectively in a video. So I am just going to go through some of the endocrine glands, kind of how some of different endocrine glands work, and what some of the hormones that some of them produce. And that's going to be about the extent of this chapter. Hormones. That's your slow-lasting communication. That is basically biochemicals that help control your body. Okay? The nervous system is your rapid response. Your hormone is long-term, long-lasting response. Glands secrete hormones, which travel usually in the bloodstream to change metabolism of some group of tissue or cells. Each hormone affects very specific cells. These cells that the hormone affects are called target cells. And in order to affect them, the target cells have a little receptor protein that allows the hormone to attach to it and generate effects. So if there's a hormone here, in order to make this cell do something, it has to have the proper protein on the surface for this hormone to attach to. If it does, then the cell will be affected. If it doesn't, it won't affect it. Basically, this is an analogy. The hormones affect target cells. They're saying just like a radio signal plays on radios that are tuned into the right station. Hormones only produce responses in target cells. Some of the examples in nature we see of hormones is going from larval stages to adult stages. So this caterpillar goes into a chrysalis, hormones come into play, and he changes from this little guy to this guy. Same thing with a tadpole. What controls the formation of a frog from a tadpole? It's the hormones. Hormones are either water or lipid soluble. That means they will go into solution in one or the other. If a hormone is lipid soluble, that means it will go into solution in fats. If it's water soluble, it will be repelled by fats. Now, why is that important? The plasma membrane of most cells are made up of phospholipid bilayers. So most hormones have to act on a cell kind of indirectly by attaching to a receptor protein and setting off a chemical reaction inside the cell. Those hormones cannot cross that lipid barrier. Now, if the hormone is lipid soluble, it will diffuse right across the lipid barrier. Here's water soluble. This is called a second messenger system. So here's a bloodstream that is carrying some type of hormone. Now, the hormone is water soluble, so it can't get inside the cell past this phospholipid bilayer. But it diffuses out of a capillary and it attaches to the proper cell. When it attaches to the cell basically causes sorry, I'm getting flustered here. So it attaches to this cell. Now, this protein has normally got this protein attached to it. Okay, so imagine this protein and this protein attached. The hormone hits this, attaches to this protein, and it causes this protein to move away. It breaks off. So the protein that breaks off of this, this protein can no longer bind to this protein. So it travels over here, and it binds to this protein. Okay? When it binds to this protein, it works like an enzyme. And if you want to know how enzymes work again, you can go back and look at, I believe it's chapter 4 and 5 in the textbook. Remember, they act on substrates. Okay, so the enzyme functions and a series of chemical reactions occur. Let's take it step by step. So hormone circulates in the bloodstream. It binds to the receptor protein. the second messenger molecule is activated. Here's the second messenger. So this guy breaks off of this protein, binds to this, and releases a messenger that goes down and causes a chemical reaction. And that's the cell's response. Okay? This hormone never actually gets inside of this cell. So these water-soluble hormones act through a series of proteins to cause a response in the cell. I've given you a link and basically the name of the link. This is a YouTube McGraw-Hill animation that will demonstrate this pretty well. You could just do a search for second messengers, the CAMP and CA pathways, or you just probably put second messengers in YouTube and you will find a ton of options. Let's see if I can do. So here I have searched in YouTube second messenger system, and we can see quite a few of them. This is the one I was referring to. It will show you. I can't put it on here or the thing will be blocked for copyright violation, so I'm not going to do anything like that. But there's several here you can look at on YouTube. You can find any number of videos there, and hopefully this won't get blocked for violation of copyright, but we'll just have to wait and see. So now let's go and look at how lipid solubles will work. Here is a hormone that is lipid soluble. This could be testosterone. Testosterone is a hormone. It's lipid soluble. It will diffuse directly through the phospholipid bilayer. It doesn't need any kind of protein or channel or anything at all. It will just naturally diffuse in, and it will get into the system, and it will go in. Here is an enzyme, receptor protein, and it will trigger something. A new protein's being built. Okay? So the difference between water soluble and lipid soluble actually goes inside the cell. Water soluble doesn't. Okay? That's the big difference. All right? Some major human endocrine glands. We got several here. Up in the brain, you have the hypothalamus, the pineal, and the pituitary. Here in the throat region, you have the thyroid glands and the parathyroids. Down in the kidneys, you have the adrenal glands, the pancreas, and here's some ovaries. In males, you have the testes. Okay, so the pituitary gland has two groups, the anterior and posterior. Anterior meaning front, posterior meaning the rear. The anterior part has cells that actually produce and release hormones. The posterior pituitary is a continuation of the hypothalamus, and it releases hormones that the hypothalamus produces, but it doesn't produce the hormones themselves. It just regulates the release of hypothalamus hormones. Hypothalamus adjusts hormone production based on current hormone levels. It uses a negative feedback system. And remember, a negative feedback system is when you take the original stimuli and move it in the opposite direction. So if I have too much hormone, I'll reduce the amount that's being released. If I don't have enough hormone, I will increase the amount that is being released. So here's your normal hormone level. If your level gets too high, the hypothalamus decreases stimulation of the pituitary gland. The pituitary decreases stimulation of the gland, and less hormone is produced. If your hormone level gets too low, you'll produce more hormone. Okay, some glands that control, let's see, the kidney, the mammary gland, and the uterus are controlled by the posterior pituitary gland. The kidney produces ADH. This has a role in water conservation. The mammary gland produces oxytocin, so does the uterus, and these play a role in uterine contraction and milk letdown. The endocrine glands controlled by the anterior pituitary. The mammary glands, thyroid, adrenal cortex, testes, ovaries, and brain endorphins. The mammary glands controlled by the anterior pituitary produce the hormone prolactin. Thyroid produces thyroid-stimulating hormone. The adrenal cortex, adrenal corticosteroid. I cannot remember the actual name of that for the acronym. Testes and ovaries, FSH is follicle-stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, and then brain endorphins. Those things that kind of give you that little high feeling. Here's some definitions. I don't want to read these to you. I figure you can read those. You have this PowerPoint in your eLearn. Okay. There are some disruptions to endocrine glands. Sometimes they will over or underproduce things like growth hormone and producing abnormally large or small individuals. Okay. And so that's not as common as it once was. If you catch some of these conditions early enough, you can actually reverse them by regulating hormone levels. Metabolism. What hormones regulate metabolism? Thyroid handles thyroid hormone and calcitonin. Parathyroid produces parathyroid hormone. Epinephrine and norepinephrine. This in the adrenal medulla, this is kind of your triggers your fight or flight response or slows it down. Adrenal cortex, pancreas, insulin glucagon. That is plays a huge role in blood sugar levels. This one, calcitonin and parathyroid hormone, these control calcium levels. These speed up or slow down your nervous system for the fight or flight response. This is blood sugar. Melatonin. When you turn out the lights, your pineal gland starts cranking out melatonin. The melatonin makes you sleepy. Natural production. Here's what everything here does. The glucocorticoids and mineralocorticoids, they affect blood volume, salt balance, some stuff like that. Epinephrine and norepinephrine can increase the heart rate and blood pressure, dilate airway so breathing rate increases. Basically, it speeds you up or slows you down, depending on whether you're generating the fight or flight response or you're trying to control it. Here is an example of the pancreas. This is another negative feedback system, the insulin and the glucagon. So, normal blood level. If your blood glucose gets too high, your pancreas secretes insulin. Body takes up the glucose, stores it, and your blood glucose level decreases. If your blood glucose gets too low, your pancreas will secrete glucagon. Glucagon will release glucose into your bloodstream, and your blood's glucose level will increase. It is possible, if you eat too many sweets, you can actually damage the insulin production and become diabetic. Maintaining too high of a blood glucose level can cause problems as you get older. Now, when you're younger, it's not a problem. You'll zip right through it, and your body can handle that. However, as you get older, it becomes less likely and less capable of handling that, and you might end up like me with too much blood sugar, and your doctor yelling at you saying, cut back on the sweets. You're going to become a diabetic if you're not careful. And I can't remember what type of diabetes that is. I'm not that knowledgeable on a lot of these diseases, but I've cut back on sugar, and so now my blood levels are not that high. Here is the regulate metabolism. Melatonin. Darkness initiates it. The melatonin concentration tells the body cells how much light the eyes are receiving, and it makes you get sleepy. Okay? And interesting note, if you live in a high enough latitude, like in certain parts of Alaska, during certain parts of the year, the sun never sets. It just kind of moves in a circle around the sky because you're really high up there. And this wreaks havoc with people's photo periods and causes some problems. And so the people up there, they have to have blackout curtains and stuff so it will get dark enough so that they can sleep. The reproductive hormones, progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone. These are, here's your definitions. Progesterone and estrogen regulates menstrual cycles, prepares the body for pregnancy, maintains secondary sex characteristics in females. Testosterone handles sperm development, secondary sex characteristics in males. There is an interesting phenomena going on. Basically, males are starting to not produce enough testosterone. They measure this in what they call your T level, and it's like 1 through 5. And there are a lot of things that can affect testosterone production, but testosterone production, if you don't make enough, can lead to a lot of things, everything from feeling suicidal to depression and hyperaggression. So it is a problem. For example, there's a precursor called DHEA, and it is a precursor to testosterone. If, as a male, you eat too much soy protein, it will interfere with conversion of DHEA into testosterone. How do I know that? Well, I used to drink soy protein shakes, and my testosterone levels got low. So I saw the DHEA, that it was really, really high. And, after I got my lab results and I was looking at them on the website of my doctor, I was looking at that going, okay, well, why is that so high? What is it? And I went and looked, and that's how I figured it out. So I quit drinking the soy protein shakes, quit eating soy protein, and bingo, my testosterone came back to where it needed to be. So my next blood test, I showed normal testosterone, and my doc was like, okay, well, I don't know what that blurb was. And I explained to him that I had just altered my diet. That was a pretty easy fix. Okay, so there's some other things that can affect testosterone. Being overweight can lead to problems, things like that. That is all I'm going to cover in endocrine glands. It's a pretty basic treatment. Thanks.